Thank you so much for joining. This is #No Limits, and I am your host, Shelly Kino. #No Limits is about people who society places limits upon, but who are busting through those limits. Ophelia says in Hamlet, "We know who we are, but not who we will be." And I believe that to be 100% true, and that there is not a better or more beautiful example than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. Very quick, simplified science lesson. The caterpillar literally dissolves into its cells, and just when it must think its life is over, it reforms into the butterfly. However, it's not finished struggling yet. It still has to fight to get out of the cocoon to make its wings strong enough to take it everywhere it's going to go in its lifetime. That can't be easy, but neither is busting through limits that society places upon us. Today, I have an amazing guest. She has been on all the national networks. She is an amazing entrepreneur, author, just all the things. Not quite ready to bring her on just yet. Just have to go through the business things. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so that you don't miss any of my amazing guests. And also, if you're watching live, give us a live and a hashtag where you're from. And if you're watching in the replay, give us a hashtag replay and where you're watching from. If you are joining us during the live event, please go ahead and enter any comments or questions that you might have into the chat, and I will be sure that Jennifer gets a chance to look at them, and we will respond to those questions and comments if they are pertinent to the show and what we are talking about. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Jennifer on. Hey, Jennifer, how are you doing? Welcome.
Great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing well. So, Jennifer, you heard the introduction. What is it that brings you as my guest today? What is that one main limit that you had to bust through?
I think I'm still pushing through new limits and constantly evolving, but I mean, it just depends on which day, really, right? Isn't there always new limits to push through? So,
yes. Yeah. So go ahead and explain to the audience who you are. What is GRIT? And we'll just go on to our conversation from there.
So I'm Jennifer Bardot. I hold a dual master's in secondary education counseling and private practice therapy. I've published 7 international best-selling anthologies, helping over 275 folks become published authors. I'm currently working on my 8th anthology. And on that journey, I realized there's a piece of healing when you have your story that you can share and transformation happens, but you also need a supportive community. So I founded an association called GRIT Community, which offers thought leadership opportunities and for folks to actually have their voice amplified in a variety of ways. It was either at my expo, my gala, my 12 virtual workshops, or my in-person lunch and learns. It's a network that builds authentic relationships and gives you an opportunity to have a platform, to have a voice.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing who you are. And I so appreciate when I have met you in person and even online when we have talked, your energy is unmatchable. I don't know anyone that can keep up with you or, just do all of the things that you are doing. And so I remember several months back when we were in person and we were talking and I asked you about coming on because you told me, and now I'm drawing a blank as to whether or not you said you had ADHD, dyslexia, both, and some, I can't remember.
Both, yes. So actually, I guess it was in the 3rd grade, I was diagnosed with a disability. But if you think back when special education, it's evolved quite a bit over the time. So I was just coded with a learning disability and they really didn't get into the weeds as to what that meant. I just knew as a girl, I struggled with reading and comprehending anything and I thought a lot differently. So my mom would have my IQ tested and it showed that I was gifted, but I had a big deficit in regards to comprehension and reading. So I had to learn to evolve very young. And, through that, I think that's where my grit has come from, as well as my resiliency. But yes, I have both ADHD as well as dyslexia. So as a girl, that's unique within itself. But I've learned that that's actually a gift. And that's how I have so much energy. And a word that I'm usually called is effervescent because I've learned just to be positive, because if you allow life to sneak up and you hone in on all the negativity of life, it changes your perspective. So every day I wake up and, it's up to me how I want to live that day. But this is something I'll have to live with forever. So I'm just learning as I go. But I will tell you, it's been extremely rewarding now that AI has been more of a funnel of hope for me, because now I can make sure that everything is grammatically correct when I'm putting together my emails or my marketing campaigns or even publishing my books. And that's essentially why I started publishing books as well, just because I like to do hard things to push myself out of my comfort zone and essentially grow.
Yeah, and I think that's just so amazing that someone with dyslexia is publishing books, and not just a book, but multiple books. And so let's talk a little bit about these anthologies. You said you have 7 out and the 8th is getting ready to come out.
Mhm.
So what goes into developing an anthology, and how does having ADHD and dyslexia play into those for you?
Well, let's just start with the ADHD. I've realized that my gift is creativity, right? The hard part is actually following through and committing to completion. So I've really trained myself to do just that, even though it sucks. So one of the words or the phrases I always use is push through the suck. But in regards to dyslexia, I have an editor, I have a writing coach, I have a team around me to help me see my imperfections, because a lot of times the way my brain codes is I'll think I've typed or written a certain word and it's actually the exact opposite word. Or I haven't put the word as I'm reading the sentence in there at all. My brain sees it, but it's actually not on paper or in the written context. So it's been pretty interesting, but I have a team around me that helps me with that to make sure that I am sounding succinct and everything is being communicated as I've envisioned it. But I started doing these anthologies back in 2021 because at the time this was, our world was faced with COVID and no community and so much uncertainty and just hopelessness. So it became my mission to start sharing stories to create hope through hardship, because I feel like as you share your story, you're able to relate with some of those authors and it alleviates some of that loneliness. Because a lot of us think we're on an island when we have gone through challenges or some sort of hard moment in our life. So I started showcasing these stories to create hope and show that people have a path out or a new perspective, or they're able to identify with one of the authors because they've gone through similar things, or they can relate with one of their stories. So that's kind of how I've intertwined all of the and see, here's my little fidget. That's how I'm sitting still right now. But yeah, that's what I've just learned how to. I've learned a lot about myself and my gifts and my imperfections, and really how I can hold myself accountable. So
I appreciate that. And you've had what do you normally have? About 30 to 40 authors in each of your anthologies?
Yeah, the first 5, well, actually, I think the first 6 actually had 40. And I hand select each of those authors because I want to make sure that it's on the same mission and vision, because I am not a proponent of being a victim. I think you can learn from your lessons, but you have to see that as a gift or, some sort of blessing. So yeah, I will have over 300 after this next anthology.
Okay, that was the question I was going for. I was like kind of doing the math. And so I so appreciate that, because in that sense, you and I have done the exact same thing. I have one book out, and it is the story of 9 different families who have someone who's neurodivergent in the family, where your 300 plus authors come from all walks of life, all different types of backgrounds. In the first ones that you have published already, do you have any of those stories that just really stand out to you, or I don't want to call them your favorite, but that really gave you a different way to look at something than what you have already been looking at something?
Of course, I'll say absolutely. And it's hard just to pick one because, like I said, every day you're faced with a new challenge and a new obstacle. And I always think no matter what conversation you're having, any age, any gender, background, ethnicity, whatever, there's always something to be gained from every conversation. So actually stepping into the shoes of these authors and witnessing their stories and hearing what they have gone through, it always gives you a new perspective, and it's energizing and it's interesting. I actually converted the past 2 anthologies into an Audible because obviously for me, reading is difficult for me to sit still and actually comprehend everything. So prior to that, I used to actually take all of the stories, put it into my Google Word doc, and then have Google read it to me, but they're now in Audible. So I love that because you actually get to hear the story in the author's voice and tone, and it's just powerful.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate what you just said, because as an adult, and this kind of leads into what you said before about you're still facing limits every day and you're still busting through those limits. And the fact that you are still having accommodations that you either provide for yourself or, maybe somebody is providing them to you, I think is a key component that a lot of people, especially educators, and I hate to call them out, but that is what I am. I'm an educator, and I experienced this so many times with my students that another teacher would say, well, they're not going to get these accommodations for whatever, their driving test, their state standardized testing, in a job, in whatever.
Nope.
And yeah, can you speak to that? Because not just, I'm sure, just the Google Doc reading it to you, but I'm sure there are other things. I mean, like you said, you're holding a fidget.
Yeah, right.
What other kinds of things can you think of that you do or you have other people provide for you?
Well, I feel like when you don't fit in the box in society, it's really not an easy road. So like when I got accepted into grad school, in order to study for, I think it was a GMAT, I had to study for that for almost a year and a half, just because standardized testing is not something that folks with a neurodivergent brain are gifted at. Now, I could talk through that, test in a heartbeat if it was read to me, but some of those words are really difficult to understand. And then think about that as an employment opportunity. I've always worked in banking or finance or something heavily regulated. They have you take these different standardized testing to identify your IQ. And that was, they don't give you extra time to take those tests. You just have to push through and really buckle down and figure out how you're going to succeed. And I've always been able to do that. I think I'm extremely resilient and extremely stubborn. So I've been able to hone in on that. But there's been plenty of times in life when I've been wanting to give up just because it would be easier than to fight through and push because it's so difficult, because my brain thinks differently. But yeah, even when you're taking the driver's ed test, there's a reading component, and there isn't a special person available to read it to you or make sure you're understanding how the questions are actually being transposed. And I remember hating whenever they would put the questions for a test in a different context where you pick A, B, or C, but the question would be so confusing, and it was hard enough just to read the question to be able to figure it out. But yeah, our world doesn't really think about others that aren't like the status quo. So I've always learned to just do things a little bit differently and take my time and be patient. But even when I was a kid and I had that diagnosis, I never wanted to be seen any differently. So I'd rather get the C+ than the A without getting extra help. So that's been me, because I feel like you grow faster if you're uncomfortable. So
interesting. So I want to talk about that though, then, because so did you then not have an IEP or a 504?
I had an IEP. Yeah. The entire time. Okay. Since the third grade up until high school. And I'm so stubborn. They actually told my parents that I wasn't going to be able to take a foreign language. So I proved them wrong, and I took 5 years of German. So
wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you feel that your resiliency, how did you develop that? And do you have ways that you help others develop that? Because not everybody has that tenacity that you have, or that stubbornness. And I'm thinking of so many of my students that they almost would curl up in a ball, if they got a C+, or, that their parents were like, oh, they have to get A's. And honestly, this doesn't apply to just people who are neurodiverse. I can think of multiple people in my lifetime who were perfectionistic, who had the all A's all the time, and they freaked out if they got something lower than that.
Yep, that's a thing.
And so, yeah. And so can you teach resiliency, and how do you do that? And have you done that?
So I have a lot of answers to your question. So first off,
I asked a lot of questions actually in one.
Yeah. So yes, you can teach resiliency. And I actually have 5 certified courses through University of California, accredited by Stanford University, which teaches resiliency, entrepreneurialism, leadership skills, and just a variety of courses. But yes, it can be taught. I think personally, I've always been self-motivated, very self-disciplined. So when I commit to doing something, I'm all in and I make sure I give it my all. And that's always been my motto. If you're giving it your all, then you're doing the best that you can do. And it also affects your self-esteem, right? So you have to work on those things. So you might not be great at writing, but I knew I was a great connector. So, I honed in on those skills, and because I had great relationships in high school when I was struggling with school, I ended up being homecoming queen. So there's different ways that you can utilize your skills and gifts and talents to compensate or to help with the shame around a different identity. But when I made it into grad school, I ended up getting a dual master's on Dean's List and graduated a semester early. So I feel like as soon as you start to learn more about yourself and you just show up every day, giving it your all, that's how you become resilient. And there's tons of different tips and tricks and tactics and how you can do that and improve your life. But I love helping people step out of their comfort zone. And that's essentially why I started GRIT and publishing these anthologies, because once you start stepping out of your comfort zone, you're going to build that thicker skin and you're going to start having more self-belief, and there's transformation that happens, and there's resiliency as well, because you're doing hard things and you're stepping into the unknown, which may go great or you might land flat on your face, and you'll never know until you start doing that. And the more times you do that, I think the more resiliency do you develop as well. But actually in my third anthology, it was Resilience. That was the anthology itself. I have tons of authors within that anthology who shared different tactics of how they've become more resilient. And then I also share on the very back of the book the 3 skills that I think that you need to have resiliency, to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, to understand that there are no such things as perfection. And no matter how great your life is, there's going to be a day that you're going to fall into the ditch, but you have to learn how to pull yourself out. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so important. And so, is it okay if I share your website really quickly just so that everybody can see it? And it is called, I hope this is the right one. Yeah. mygritcommunity.com. And I'm going to pull the actual website up so that we can look at it for just a second.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
You might want to mute because I think my radio interview starts talking in the background. It's kind of a
okay. Yeah. So when they go to your website, mygritcommunity.com. So, I mean, right off the bat, there's the join the grit. So when they join GRIT, what happens?
So when you click on it, it'll take you to the actual newsletter. So you can like and subscribe. And I send out different GRIT tips every week and different community activities that I'm hosting. But there's 3 different tiers of membership. So if you once you click on join GRIT and you type in subscriber, there's 3 different platforms that you can join. So you can either be a gold member, you can either be a platinum member, or you can be a VIP member. With each of those memberships, they come with different offerings. I also have a peer-led GRIT group coaching program. So if you're not interested in the larger networking, we have a small cohort of like-minded individuals that you'll go through an annual program together, learn aspects of GRIT, and then actually have accountability partners that will help you walk through different, challenges that you're uncovering or getting different perspectives. And then I have a one-on-one coaching program that I offer as well. The most upcoming event is the Expo, which is a free community event that I host at Maryville University. It's on May 18th. It's free to our community, and then it's an opportunity for vendors to showcase their business. So from 9 to 10, I have private networking just for the vendors to connect. And then I open it up to the general public at 10. And then that goes till 3. And then I rent out the atrium and the auditorium. So in the auditorium, there's 2 different thought leadership panels. So attendees can gain different perspectives from different leaders. But yeah, I have a variety of offerings within GRIT. So if you're looking to grow through an independent study, you can go to mygritacademy.com, and that's the 5 accredited courses. If you're looking for a small cohort to grow, that's the peer GRIT group coaching. If you're looking for one-on-one coaching, I'm your accountability partner, and we come up with a strategic plan for you. And then if you're looking to really define your legacy, go through a really extreme transformative experience, you can actually participate as a GRIT author. And the next book is actually Mental Fortitude. So that's about how we have our own self-limiting beliefs, but once we're able to unlock and see that we are capable and we have the capacity, that's when we go to the next levels. Or you can join as a member and get access to my virtual workshops and my in-person lunch and learns, my annual gala, where I get to give out GRIT Awards. So my community members will highlight 12 individuals from 2026 that have had GRIT. So I gave out 12 awards last year for adults, 4 youth GRIT awards. And it's just a really fun way to highlight folks that have pushed through the suck, as I put it.
Awesome. So I'm looking just at the book. So the first one, are they listed? Are they stacked in order? Like
they're in order. Yeah. So the first one was owning your grit. And then I committed to actually teaching grit. So every 5 months I rolled out another anthology with another 40 authors. So it was growth, then resilience, then intention, then tenacity. And then I let that sit and I realized, you know what, there's an aspect that I hadn't defined, which is living well with grit. So that's finding your joy, choosing to be you, and choosing to evolve. And then last summer, I rolled out successful entrepreneurs with grit, because if you think of an industry that you have to have grit, that's being an entrepreneur. So,
yeah, I had discovered that.
Yes. I grew up with entrepreneurs. My family's owned a business here in St. Louis for over 92 years. And I watched the family business. My uncle owned a business. My mom owned a business. I had my first business when I was 21. And every evolution of business owners, there's a new level of hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% can see that. And I only own my own business and I'm my own employee. So I don't have anybody else that I am worrying about, but I can just imagine, you know, as I've leveled up, even the bits that I've leveled up, it's it's kind of taxing, and definitely takes all the skills that you mentioned. So is there anything else on the website before I stop sharing it that you want me to go to or that you want me to highlight?
No, I will say the audibles are pretty cool because it's not just one of the anthologies. It's a collection of stories from all 7 anthologies piled into one.
Cool.
So it's pretty neat.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. So yeah, that's just mygritcommunity.com. And are they available anywhere besides through your website?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Target and Walmart.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. So what else? This is a loaded question.
Kindle.
What else do you do besides write anthologies and have people help you write anthologies? So you talked a little bit about some of them at the beginning, but I think your newest, and it might not be, but to me, it's your newest endeavor is radio.
Yeah, so I actually got into radio as of June, which is just another platform to give my leaders a voice and to showcase some really cool things that are happening in our community. So I've been able to interview several different folks over the past several months. That was on 590 AM radio. They've actually since closed. So I'm in conversation with a couple other different studios right now to keep doing that work. But I love being able to highlight leaders and, you know, give them a mic and a platform to showcase what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't know that the station had stopped.
It's very recent. Yeah. The station decided to close. So they went a different direction. So yeah.
Okay. And yeah, unfortunately, you know, radio just does seem to be more and more going by the wayside. And it's more things like this where people are doing podcasts, which do you also have one of those?
That's funny. So here am I, right? So I helped recruit a couple of my friends to be on the radio show, not on the radio, but on a podcast. So when the station closed, here's my resiliency. I actually launched a GRIT podcast producing company. So GRIT actually has a podcast production company now. So we actually have a handful of clients that we've actually taken on, and we produce their podcasts and we upload them on Spotify and YouTube and create custom reels, and we televise it and chop it up in little, they call them reels now is the code word. So yeah, now GRIT actually has a podcast. So
awesome. So yeah, okay. So we've done anthologies, we've done the entrepreneurial, we've done the podcast, we've done radio. What am I forgetting?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I have a jewelry line. I have a clothing line, just different endeavors that I like to do and, you know, find ways to highlight other businesses. So yeah, I do a variety of things and it keeps me energized because obviously, you know, with someone with ADHD, if you wake up and do the same thing every day, like Groundhog Day, that's really awful. So yes. I'm constantly finding new ways to get energy and honing in on that. So yeah, this GRIT production company where I have a couple of clients now has been a lot of fun and I'm learning a lot of new things. So, but the courses were the biggest like hurrah for the past 6 months because getting courses certified at the University of California wasn't an easy like stretch. It actually took over 2.5 years to accomplish that. So now I'm getting them out to the school districts and getting them accessible to kiddos in 10th, 11th, 12th grade. They can put it on their college transcript. and it's college credit hours. And then if you're an adult, you can actually go through my 5 courses and my capstone, and it's pretty cool. Yeah. So GRIT is a word that I trademarked. So it stands for growth, resilience, intention, and tenacity. And I really feel like those are the 4 key aspects of owning who you are and really stepping into the unknown and just living out your purpose and passion.
Yeah. And the fact that you have all these different irons in the fire isn't surprising to me because of knowing you. Do you feel that anyone who might be watching that knows you through any of these avenues is surprised to learn about your dyslexia and ADHD?
Well, it's funny because, like I told you, I never would tell anybody that because I didn't want to be seen any differently. Because as soon as you expose that, then they'll start seeing it more and more and more. So, but what I realized is you can't have a piece of you in the shadows. You have to be your whole self. So I think people are surprised when I share that because of the fact that, I lead a column in the Small Business Monthly newsletter once a month where I get to highlight a different female leader, and that's a written blog, So I think my whole mindset is by me sharing that, people have this facade that if you're a leader and you've had a couple of wins or some awards, you've got it all figured out and you're perfect. And there's no such thing as perfect. And I like to expose that side of me to show people if I can do it, anybody can do it. So.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to ask that question, because I think people see the social media side, they see those minutes or those hours when you are on point and you are locked in and focused and you're getting things done. Are you willing to share what it's like for you when you're not in those moments, in those quiet, dark, and I know that we talked about this once before too, of the things that people had said to you.
Oh, yeah. There's been plenty of naysayers along my journey. I mean, when I was in the 3rd grade, they told my mom and I that I was never going to graduate from high school because my disabilities were so profound, and they didn't think that I'd actually be able to figure out how to comprehend anything. But my mom was such an advocate for me. I went to private tutoring, and she invested so much her time and resources into my education to figure out how I could start, retaining this information and comprehending what I was reading. Right now, I just got distracted. I'm sorry. There's a moment.
That's okay.
I was like, where am I going?
You have children in the house. Yeah.
Yeah. I have my boys home because, today's election day and there's no school. But there's been plenty of times when the naysayers actually got into my self-esteem, and I had that self-doubt, and I had to push through and figure out, I'm not like everybody else, but what my strengths are going to help me push through and learn things a different way. But being told that in the 3rd grade kind of set me on the path of not being the best student. And when I realized that, I wasn't great at English and there was a lot of things in school that I didn't like, I was the kid that skipped school, and I was the kid that went down that alternative path until I realized I'm allowing that naysayer to dictate my life. I needed to regain control, and I started to learn how to be more self-disciplined, and I started running every day and just putting in the work. And that's what I realized what it came down to. And that's why I love that word grit, because Harvard Review will say the most successful business owners have grit. Oh goodness, I'm having a moment again, but it's my kids. They're distracting me. They're trying to talk to me on the side. So I'm listening to that and trying to talk to you. But at West Point, they say the most successful West Point candidates are those that have grit. It's not about, intelligent or working hard. It's just about putting in the work, showing up every day, having that resiliency, having that grit, having that tenacity, and being intentional with your time and your talents. So.
Yeah. And accepting who you are and not saying that, because I'm different, somehow I'm bad or I'm less or I'm wrong.
And that's why I say I don't play into the victim card. I never want to be a victim. And I realize I was born this way for a reason, and I have to own who I am. And I will never tell you that I'm an expert of all things. And I will never tell you that I'm perfect, because none of us should be, because that doesn't give us any opportunity for growth. And then you can't actually, evolve if you are an expert of all things. There should always be something new that you're growing and learning from. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking of, you mentioned earlier, and I I've never been diagnosed with, and I don't really think I have ADHD, but I have what I call cause and effect thoughts. Like I'll have these thoughts that it'll be over here, but I'm suddenly over here because it's jumped all the way over there. And so I'm connecting what you said earlier about taking German in high school for 5 years because you were told you couldn't learn a foreign language. And there's no way then connecting that to what you're saying now that we can know everything about all there is. No. And I posted a reel earlier today that, you know, I can do my best, but my best isn't all there is. Exactly. It's my best, but Jennifer has a best and our viewers have a best. And, you know, if we can bring the bests together, we're still not going to get all that there is because you can't bring 8 billion people together, but you're going to see things from a different light and a different perspective and possibly reach a person that, you know, the first 2 people that were doing their best couldn't come up with. But now you've got, you know, 6 people and they're all bringing their best. And now you're like, oh gosh, yeah, that just seems so obvious. Why didn't we try this before? Why didn't we go down that path before?
Yeah, it definitely shaped me in being a leader. And I think that's something that most people don't think about. Like just because you're labeled with some whatever it is, right? That doesn't mean with the diagnosis that you are everything that diagnosis predicts. Like that's why we all have different finger indexes, right? So I feel like some people just hear that word and they just think, well, that's all that they're capable of, or that's who they are because our society has put that on us. But that's actually not how the real world works, you know? So
right. Yeah. And absolutely. It does feel like we get stuck on one part of a person. You know, if you say
I'm a national keynote speaker. I mean, I never walk up there with a script because I know I can't read, but I've memorized it because that's my gift, is memorizing and connection. My gift is not reading and it's not following a script. So you just have to learn to pivot and evolve. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there are so many, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about these are limits that people have placed on you, and they continue to place on you in some aspect that are also, though, being placed on students all across the world in general, all across the world, because we think, oh, well, you know, she can't read, she can't comprehend. So that's the first problem.
Yep. Assumption is the first problem. Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't feel like it's anybody's responsibility to predict anybody else's future. Instead, they should be pouring into them with a supportive voice rather than all the negativity. Because I remember my first IEP meeting, even with my kiddos, because my first was born with a speech delay as well as a developmental delay. And now he's exceptionally bright. But they, you know, they said a lot of negative things during his IEP. And because I had come from an IEP, I realized that early intervention was key. So I mean, by the time he was in kindergarten, he had already mastered his IEP, but some people don't have that foresight. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it is so true. And that's why I do what I do, because there are so many families going through this that have no idea what they're facing. Right. They have no idea what they can ask for. They don't realize that they are supposed to be an equal member of the team.
Right.
The school doesn't treat them as an equal member of their child's education.
Seeing a child called on to read out loud in front of the whole room was like one of the most embarrassing things that I could have ever done. So I remember like trying to just hide in the back of the classroom, you know, but it's hard because I feel like those teachers, those educators need to get to know the students individually and understand what are their weak spots rather than highlighting the weak spots in front of everybody in a group setting. Figure out what their strengths are and highlight that. Help with the self-esteem and help with the self-belief.
Yes, absolutely. A strategy that I used, and I never thought much about it, but it was, well, I know a lot of people just don't want to read in front of a whole class for a variety of reasons. And so in my classrooms and when I subbed, if it was time, if we had to do a read aloud, or we chose to do a read aloud, I would say, okay, as long as you can tell me the first word of where you are supposed to read, and then you can say pass. And I'm not going to ask why you're passing. I just want to know that you're following along, and then you don't have to read out in front of everybody. And I get really frustrated, and I've never been a student with a disability, but I get frustrated for students because of how we treat them as educators. You know, that it is, if you don't fall into this box, if you're anywhere on the outside, then you on the outside are the problem.
Right.
And
And
it's a
most
deficit.
most people with dyslexia are bright. Like that's one of the gifts, right? Because you have to learn to think out of the box. So like, for instance, for people that aren't familiar with dyslexia, if there's a word that I'm thinking of and I can't think of it, I have to think about 3 different words that have the same meaning and plug it in conversation so I can keep the same pace of a conversation. So yeah, you learn to evolve. Your brain kind of develops an extra muscle, but it's embarrassing even among peers, because then that gives them an opportunity to think that, oh, well, she's a dummy. She can't read, or she doesn't know this word. She clearly must not be smart. So it's tough. It's tough all around. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm hoping that having episodes like this one, and honestly, the whole hashtag no limits podcast, is to get people to think differently about those who are different, because it doesn't make that person less than. It doesn't make them less capable, less less smart, less intelligent. It's just a different way to approach things. I mean, we have lots of people, so many entrepreneurs have ADHD.
Oprah Winfrey, Jim Carrey.
Yes.
Yeah. There's so many.
Yes.
I actually featured an excerpt in that. I actually think it was in Successful Entrepreneurs with Grit, because some people think they have no idea, because it's not really talked about. But that's something I do want to highlight, or even I think Branson does too. He's a neurodivergent brain. But yeah, it's a gift. And a lot of entrepreneurs they just actually started showcasing that more and more, because we can think differently and we tend to be leaders and we have that resiliency, that thick skin. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, you had to develop it. Most students had to develop it very early on, because they were being told, and their parents were being told, your child won't, can't, will never.
I hate that. I actually have an image. That's why I did this. So it's an image that I can't, and it cuts off the T. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the title of my book is Those Who Can't Teach, and can't is in quotation marks, because all of the people that are in my book were told, you can't, you won't, you'll never, fill in the blank. And teachers hate that saying, because the saying goes, if you can, you will. If you can't, you teach. And well, those who can do, those who can't teach. And so the title of the book then is to try to flip that on its head, because just like teachers teach everyone, when we're willing and open to learning from people who are different than us, no matter what that difference is, but for my book, it was specifically about being neurodivergent, then we can be taught by anyone and everyone. And so I always autograph the book as always be teachable.
Yes.
Because we always can
be
learn.
Coachable, be teachable. That's why in all the anthologies you highlighted that they're all so different, because there's so much innovation that happens when you walk outside your industry, your age, your ethnicity, all of the factors. Because you learn so many different things from different people of all ages and walks of life.
Yeah, 100%. And I, as an educator, again, I'm always thinking everybody should always be learning anyway.
Yeah, right.
And so I wanted to change that to go with the title of the book. So that's why I always sign it, Always Be Teachable. But yeah, I mean, the only thing that the families didn't see for my book was the final couple of paragraphs. And those were the paragraphs where I told them what I learned from knowing them and interviewing them. And I'm sure you could write a whole anthology just on what you have learned from each of the authors that have been in all of your anthologies, because there is so much to learn. And I have been blessed to have many of my friends be part of those anthologies. And I know you have asked me a couple of times to also be part of them. And I'm like, well, my story's already in my own book, in my own chapter. And I don't know if that would, but anyway, but I do. I mean, I think what you're doing with those books is quite amazing.
And that's intrinsically like who I am. I love highlighting other people and watching them succeed and being their cheerleader or champion, or giving them an opportunity to have a platform. I was just at the St. Louis Small Business Top 100 People to Know, and the lady that I was there for, she was in one of my anthologies. She was actually, I think, in Intention. And she goes, Jen, when anybody asks me about how grit has impacted my life, I truly say that it's given me a voice. And watching her transformation, she has truly stepped into that leadership role. And she was the MC for my gala. She was a speaker at one of my galas. And she has transformed into a leader because she's owned who she is, and she's honed into her skills. And she's an excellent communicator, and she's an excellent connector and community advocate. And that's what I love doing, because a lot of people that are in those leadership roles, they don't take the time to self-reflect, or they don't take the time to self-advocate. And we should be celebrating all the things that we're doing in this world, because there's only one you and no one knows what you're doing unless it's shared. So I like being the other people's cheerleader. So
Yeah, it is. It's very fun. And I think there's a little bit of that aspect for me in doing this because, yes, it's my name on the show, but it's everybody else's stories.
yeah.
And kind of like you know, that idea developed from, well, I wrote this book and that's full of stories, but I can't tell all the stories that are out there. I mean, you're doing it because you're getting it from each individual author. But, you know, I'm at episode 231. So I've been able to tell with the ones in my book, 240 stories.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's huge. You're making a tremendous impact. Yes.
I hope so. I definitely hope so. So is there anything else? I know that, you know, this has been a long session today, so I don't want to keep you longer, but I want to make sure, you know, that we've covered everything. And if there's anything that we need to cover, or if you have, you know, final words that you want to share with people.
Two thoughts. So every year, I think, as you already mentioned, we should always be growing and evolving. Pick a different goal, pick a different thing you want to grow and expand upon, and watch the transformation happen. So when I first joined the banking industry, I'd worked in that during grad school, but I joined the banking industry again later, about 8 years later in life. But every year I take a different course. So one was strategic thinking, one was a 15-hour Brene Brown certification course. Just try to find something that brings you energy and new perspective and transformation. And then two, coming this fall, I'm actually on a reality TV show where we get to highlight different women who are entrepreneurs and their journey of leadership and evolution of self. So I feel like the more you learn about who you are, and that's really how you like understand how to live out your purpose.
And how long does it take the average person, and maybe there isn't an average for this, but to really learn who they are and learn like what really gets them excited? Do you know, is there like a,
well, I don't think so. That would be like in the box, right? I think there's different things that you go through in life where you learn about yourself. Maybe it's having a child. Maybe it's, you know, stepping into being an entrepreneur. Maybe it's taking the disc, you know, like just really understanding, doing so many different self-assessments to understand what are your gifts and talents. Obviously I'm an ID. I'm a driver and I'm high energy. So that's a given. But like when I took the Clifton Strength Finders, I was really able to understand, yeah, I'm competitive and yeah, I'm a strategic thinker, but there was things that I didn't know about my personality that helped me kind of understand, oh, that's why I am the way I am. And I think the more you learn about yourself, the more you can actually be you and live out your purpose to make sure you're in alignment. Because when you're in alignment, that's when the opportunities happen.
Yeah, 100%. And I think for me, I definitely, again, when I think about, you know, my example of the caterpillar turning into the butterfly, when I was 9 years old, I wanted to be a teacher. I never thought I would be speaking on national stages. I never thought I would be an author. There are so many things that I am doing now that I never thought I was going to do, or even aspired, or even entered my brain as a thought.
And when I was younger, I did dance, modeling, cheerleading, baton, ballet, all those things. I never had to use my voice. So I never saw myself as a speaker or a leader or, you know, a community advocate. I thought I was more the behind the scenes. I can perform. I could be, you know, the dancing monkey, but don't put a mic behind that stage because I can't do that. So like once I started stepping into that space, I actually realized, well, that's something that I enjoy. But it's interesting because you evolve and you learn more about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for being my guest today. I so appreciate everything that you have done, are doing, and will be doing in the future. I know that, you know, this is not all that you will do. It's just not your personality to just stop at like, okay, well, I've hit it, I'm done. And so it'll be interesting to continue to watch you as you grow. And everybody else, you know, make sure that you are checking out her website. Whoops, sorry, I showed the wrong thing here. mygritcommunity.com again is how you can reach out to her. And also you can find her on LinkedIn. And I forgot to add your, it is Own Your Own Grit at Gmail is how they would get a hold of Jennifer if they have any, if you have any questions or anything that you want to share with her or ask her about. I'm trying to add this in and it's not being with me.
Ownyourgrit.com at Gmail. So I'm always happy to jump on a call and have a conversation.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for those who joined in today. I saw we had Fran, I saw we had Violet, a couple of other people. We have Kura Buddha, and that was Violet again, and Goldilocks. So thank you guys so much for being here and for your comments. We appreciate it. And we will talk to you next time. And remember, we know who we are, but not who we will be. Have a great day.
Thank you.